Well, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Today, we are witnessing a massive shift in the way we work and how we do business with strategic and innovative use of technologies. Cloud solutions are helping enterprises becoming more resilient. But let's not forget, people are at the core of digital transformation. Embracing advanced technology can enable workforce transformation by closing the skills gap, advancing modern roles, reskilling to accelerate a data driven culture, and empowering the frontline worker. The question is, how do companies go about it in a way that delivers results for the bottom line while satisfying the needs of customers and employees? That's what we're here to find out in this conversation titled Trending Now ITes Technology Makes the Future Resilient as part of the Mint Executive Forum presented by Microsoft. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan, and joining me are two leading voices from India Inc., who will be sharing their insights on the role of innovative technologies, including AI and automation, in accelerating growth and transforming the workforce to helping enterprises stay ahead of the competition in this marathon of opportunities. Let me introduce them to you. Our first guest is Dr. Yogesh Bhatt. He is the EVP and Business Head of StackRoute, which is a pioneering initiative from technology training services major NIIT to produce the world's best full stack programmers. Our second speaker is Dhanniya Venkatasalapathy, who is the national head of the information technology vertical at Microsoft India. She's also the senior director there. Dhanniya focuses on transforming businesses with the interplay of cloud and other digital first technologies by driving organization-wide operational efficiencies and enabling a culture of collaboration. Dr. Bhatt, Dhanniya, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation around the cascading effect of digital technologies in improving people, process, and culture within organizations, which in turn helps them become more resilient to disruption. So, Dr. Bhatt, let's start the discussion with you by understanding the definition of value, especially when it comes to the workforce, considering how the pandemic accelerated digital transformation efforts for companies. We are seeing more use cases emerge of AI and cloud-based solutions, redefining the workplace itself in the context of remote work. So how do organizations now gauge the value of their employees, and how can they re-architect their workforce with the right skill set to thrive in this new world order?
Yeah, thanks, Gautam, for the introduction, and thanks for having me here. Very relevant question, but unfortunately, there's no single straight answer to that. So we need to just throw some light into what's happening today and what's the larger background of what's happening today. So we all know that last 5, 6, 7 years, there has been advent of digital technologies, whatever they are, cloud, AI, RPA, and so on and so forth. They have evolved obviously over time, and the adoption was happening at a fairly fast pace. What really the COVID did was that all those who are sitting on the fence, it has pushed them right into the center of digital. That's one. And second is those who are already inside, it has actually forced them or motivated them to really increase the adoption. So that's what really COVID has done. First wave itself, second wave makes not much difference from that perspective. We were obviously, from a work perspective, far more better prepared to not have any disruption because we had a first wave. Now, if you look at what are these technologies, we all know there is AI, there is cloud, there is RPA, there is IoT, etc. I'm not going to really throw too much light into that. But what I will do here is that what is happening today, and forcefully, of course, the two of the technologies have got a great push. Number one is cloud. Now, cloud adoption has increased multifold compared to where we were earlier, and I'm sure Microsoft is a great player in that side, and so I will hear Dhanniya about that, I'm quite sure. That's one. And second is that the collaboration platforms have really gotten a great push. Collaboration of various kind, be it for business, be it for education, be it for whatever, but the collaboration platform became a necessity. The interesting thing about digital is that these technologies thrive on each other. They can't survive without each other. That's how it is. It's a confluence of technologies, right? And therefore, this push is leading now to accelerated adoption of all the other technologies. Now, if we just look at cloud and AI as two, what are some of the key trends which are happening today is one, of course, there's a huge, the cloud is at the center. Cloud is the new normal. There are trends about single cloud versus looking at multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. That's one. There's a trend of more and more stuff which was the cloud migration, movement towards more and more cloud native. Then, of course, there are very powerful tools which all the clouds provide in terms of managing large amounts of data. Technologies such as data bricks, data lakes, delta lakes. These are at the center now, and of course, the entire idea of data sciences, as we understood, has become cloud centric. Each cloud has its own very strong libraries for machine learning and AI abilities, and very, very quickly you can configure AI for you on if you adopt any of the mainline clouds. So this is what is happening from a cloud perspective. AI, if you see, AI is slightly more nuanced because it's not a necessity as cloud is today, but it's really gaining traction now. It is also facing some friction. That's what I see. One friction is, of course, AI can't solve all the problems. I mean, as the promise is, and maybe in future someday it will, but certainly not now. And machine learning models, etc., do fail. I mean, if you look at our own COVID projections, no model could predict when exactly the wave will happen. I mean, it's not necessarily a problem in the models. If you ask a person who does modeling, they will say problem is in data. Who are in data will say models are an issue. I mean, these are debatable points, but all said and done, very firm predictions do not happen always correctly.
Okay.
Now, are also changing that the models which are based on long-term trends no more work because trend has been upset by COVID, right? I mean, if you were, let's say, forecasting, and we have actual examples of companies forecasting, for example, credit card usage. And if you use pre-COVID data, you go horribly wrong because that data is meaningless in the new world, right? I mean, things have changed so drastically, and adoption of maybe digital wallets, etc., increased drastically compared to earlier, right? So therefore, there are limitations in that. So what the push which we can see is to have more and more of building trust in AI. That's important, which will happen so far as we can do things such as explainable AI, so that a human being can understand what AI does, right? If you understand something, then you have an option to make some corrective measures, understand where it will. So
so do you see more value by AI coming in when it comes to assessing value of what employees are doing? Because at the end of the day, it's also about ROI, and for the investments that folks put in, they also want to see what's the response, what are the results. So do you see AI and other technologies playing a more important role there when it comes to assessing value?
Yes. So now I'll come to that is the center of your question, but I said that difficult to answer that without a background. So there are two ways to look at it. Number one, value of employee itself has fundamentally changed because today an employee has to be successful in a digital world. And therefore, let's say if you were a great salesperson earlier, today you cannot, let's say your style was to go out, meet people over coffee, meet people over dinner, and events, and you get good orders for your company. You can't do that anymore, right? Now, how do you skill yourself in this digital world? So that's one part of it, right? Now, I'm just giving one example. If you look at, you can look at a banker, you can look at practically everybody, right? Because the world has changed. And therefore, how do you strive during digital requires you to have certain different skill sets, which are sometimes enabled by digital, sometimes constrained because of the digital world. And second is how far digital technologies can help assess the value. So the definition of value itself is shifting. And definitely we do know that since now far more data is available on the platforms, every data is now there on the platforms. You like it or you do not like it. Of course, there are privacy concerns, etc., which are important. And therefore, there is a possibility of bringing in machine learning models, etc., to assess the value of an input. That's also true. I think we are seeing in the early days of those, but I think I've seen some of the good early adoptions of how, for example, performance management, or maybe even monitoring has been a periodic activity traditionally. You will do twice in a year, maybe performance management. You want to monitor activities, you will have regular operations calls, etc. for that, right? But today, since all data is in digital, you can practically do that every day, every week, right? So the old model of performance management, will it remain relevant? I mean, it's a question to be answered. As of today, it does, but I think it will be challenged, right?
All
So
right.
that's the way the technology is changing the way employee needs to demonstrate a value. That's on one side, and technology can help assess the value in the new world. That's also.
All right, let's see what technologies are there to help in this endeavor in terms of assessing value. Now, business transformation, of course, is synonymous with digital solutions today, Dhanya. So, what, according to you, are the top three tools that IT and ITES companies must deploy to reach their full potential? And if you could add some use cases to this answer, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. So even before I jump to tools, right, I think I'll just take a minute to talk about key priorities that customers in the IT industry are primarily focusing on. One, they're wanting to build a digital workplace, and they want to help their customers to build a digital workplace where they have a technology augmented workforce who can collaborate in a secure, productive manner from remote environments. This becomes the need of the hour. The other one is all the ITs companies are doing whatever is required to improve and grow their digital revenue and their margins. And this is where the entire context of upskilling to digital, etc., comes in. Because until and unless they do this, their agility and speed to market with appropriate IP creation, with which they can acquire a larger breadth of customers, becomes very critical, right? So then there is this huge focus towards shifting their digital talent and upskilling their existing employees or onboarding new digital skilled employees. The third one is a shift in their business delivery model itself. The entire old legacy business model is now being transformed into digitally enabled BPO, ADM businesses, etc. And there is a lot of effort going into helping these organizations to improve their cloud and their digital offerings. So SaaSification of IP, mergers and acquisition of digital partners, or creating an ecosystem through these acquisitions. And you also hear a lot about the evolving anything as a service model, right? So the entire digital uptake is something that is on the high, and that's one important priority. The third one is operational efficiency. So in this gambit, you will see a lot on increased automation, doing more with less resources, a whole lot of what Dr. Bhatt just talked about, which is data fueled business models. So helping customers with data and AI driven insights to be able to take the right decisions on time and through the life cycle, which is right from hire to retire, lead to order, order to cash, all those life stages. So the third one is operational efficiency and any tools associated with it. I'm not specifically mentioning names of Microsoft tools, but I think most of you already know that the area of digital workplace, security, privacy, collaboration, communication, Microsoft plays a very key role with our M365 and our E5 stack of products. And then coming to applying digital, we work very closely with partners like NIIT to help them onboard their existing IPs into a SaaSified product, which in all probability can be hosted on Azure and with cloud native apps that can help them quickly deliver their services to their customer. The last but not the least is in the digital world, as Dr. rightly said, the entire modus of selling has changed. So, people are looking at how do I keep a close track on what are the digital signals I'm getting from my customers, and how can I do more deep customer mining, because I'm not there face to face, I'm not having water cooler conversations, I'm not able to conduct the seminars that I used to in those respective cities. So how do I also have new customer acquisition by closely listening into what's happening through digital forensics that are coming in? So tools that play a critical role here, like the CRM tools, or the customer insights tools, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. All of this helps a lot to for these ITes companies to focus on customer acquisition as well as customer deep mining. So I would broadly classify, to summarize it, into areas pertaining to tools that are in the space of digital workplace transformation, including the entire ambit of security privacy. The second is improving operational efficiency, which is where the space of automation as well as data-driven AI and insights and data-fueled business models comes in. The third is a space of evolving digital margins, evolving digital business models, where the SaaSification, the ability to offer anything as a service, and what tools can provide, like platform reengineering itself, right, which helps to amplify the digital offering. That's the third space. And the fourth and last, not the least, is about customer mining, customer acquisition, as well as pertaining to internal employees, transforming the digital talent, ensuring the right hiring and the upskilling and all of that happens. So any tools that play in this space is what I would think will be the need of the hour for the ITES employees and customers to internally adopt as well as to position to their customers.
All right. Considering this vast expanse of solutions available, Dr. Bhatt, you've heard Dhanya outline so many solutions available. The question then becomes, how can businesses promote a culture of continuous learning among their workforce, where people are empowered by new age technologies to drive business results?
Okay, so that's of course an interesting question. To me, there are essentially only three things businesses can do. Answer to one part of that clearly lies in technology. So that's availability. So having the right kind of programs available, make them more engaging, make them available at the time of choosing of a learner, make them available at the place of choosing of the learner, and so on. Right. So that's where technology really plays a role. But then there are two more. Ultimately, it's all about motivation. It's not only about availability. If availability solves the problem of learning, then it was very, very simple. And there we know that there are only two types of motivations, either it's intrinsic or extrinsic. I think businesses have depended a lot on extrinsic motivation, and it does work for some time, which may mean, linking your promotions, to your certifications, getting into the right kind of career path, so and so forth, badges, awards, rewards, and so on and so forth, right? But I think a lot more needs to be done, and that leads to more sustainable, and we have cases for that, where we instill a sense of intrinsic motivation in the employees. So, and it can only work when you have the great learning products available to you. But then intrinsic motivation plays a major role. Now, how do you do that? It is best done when you really challenge a person. And this digital world really provides a huge challenge. And therefore, making those challenges into addressable pieces for various role groups, where various individuals, throwing it at them as to, now this is the challenge and what can you do about it? That works wonders. We have used that in many programs. If a learner is intrinsically motivated and comes inside a classroom of whatever kind, I mean, there's nothing which is more pleasurable and nothing which leads to better outcomes.
All right. But what about the adaptability factor? Because there might be some who are digital natives and there might be some who are not digital natives. So in that context, how can technology be leveraged to create innovative learning experiences that have the ability to drive both talent optimization and business growth curves?
Yeah. So from a learner perspective, if I were to classify them from a digital kind of narrative, then I can look at them as three. One, those who are digital natives, as you rightly pointed out. I mean, the millennials, the new workforce, most of them are digital natives. They are born in digital. They only understand digital. So it becomes very easy, on one hand, to work with them when we go with digital solutions, be it for learning or anything else. At the same time, there are challenges there of a various different types. Right? I mean, if you try things which are traditional, they do not often work, and not everything can be done using quick bites and things like that, right? I mean, complex learning process is a painful process, and that cannot be avoided. Sometimes we do see that the millennials, the digital natives, find it tough to get into that process because they are not too used to that. Now, that's a challenge. There's some positive, some negative. The second are those who are digital migrants. So they are workers who are earlier and now they have to adopt into digital. In fact, I can classify them into two categories. One, those who need to work, they have a core competence. As I said, they could be a salesperson, they could be a banker, they could be uh, whatever, right? However, they now need to use digital technologies to perform their own duties. We have programs such as digital versatilist programs for that kind of learners, so that they can adopt digital technology of the kind which Dhanniya was talking about. I mean, understand where in your job role you can use the power of AI, where in your job role how can you use effectively a collaboration platform beginning from there, etc. So that's a different challenge. But the good thing there is that those who have grown up in a non-digital world have very often, not necessarily, but very often come up the hard way. And therefore, so far as we can convince them intrinsically that this is necessary for you to get in, they put in the required effort into that. And third, of course, are digital gurus. I mean, we don't have to do much about that, but that's also a category of learner. And for them, really, we need to provide a very, very challenging problems of today. And they really like to solve them. If you give them easy problems, they become a huge disruptors inside the classroom. So I think these are the three categories need to be dealt in three different ways.
All right. Considering these categories that Dr. Bhatt has outlined, Dhanya, let me come to you and pick your mind on, what are you hearing from customers? How are the trends shaping up broadly in the ITES industry in this context? Considering this massive shift which has taken place in the industry this year, and it's an external factor. Could you share some recent developments and notable trends in the industry based on your interactions with customers?
Sure. I think, both me and Dr. Bhatt talked about the changes and how digital transformation is creating the need for more data fuel business models. And in this context, there are a lot of emerging trends that we've started to see. And this, all of us have personally been touched in some shape or form. First of all, education, right? There are a whole lot of new technologies that are gaining momentum in the post-COVID world. I would think healthcare, education, remote working, retail are the most critical of the lot. And what do the ITES customers do? They provide solutions to these industries who are actually rapidly ramping up in the post-COVID world. And in that context, I just want to bring in some use cases and some solutions that are gaining a lot of momentum. Digital transformation in education. Earlier, e-learning we thought was a radical new idea. Now, no longer. It's a norm. And it has its positives and its negatives. It's going to quadruple as an industry in the next 2 years. While it democratizes learning to a good extent, sometimes technology also acts as a divider, right? So it might be sometimes unaffordable. So how does one bring in equanimity in this entire concept of digital transformation in the space of education? That's one area where we are seeing a lot of technology related advancements going in. The other one, the entire food business, the takeaway restaurants, right? The fine dining entirely moved to takeaways, and people started to try and recreate the same experiences at home. So, our Kitchens of India, the meal delivery platforms, it's now grown to almost a $182 billion industry worldwide, and what we call as the ghost kitchens. They're gaining momentum where a single kitchen platform is built and for multiple people to gather, make products ready, and provide home-like, restaurant-like home dining experiences. The third space gaining a lot of traction, mergers and acquisitions. The digital natives or born in digital cloud organizations are getting rapidly acquired, and they are also getting a lot of support from customers who are absorbing their solutions, as well as they are privy to mergers and acquisitions by the larger players who want not to spend too much time redeveloping these solutions, but quickly acquire and move on. Then we've heard about the remote work during pandemic, Teams, Zoom, the Cisco solutions, etc. They've grown manifold. Then coming to actual use cases where drones have provided, in the COVID affected world, drones which were not allowed to fly indoors in confined spaces, by virtue of some deep space and AI related technologies being applied. One of our partners, Digital Aerolist, they've created a solution which will help to test the disinfection power of the UV lights in closed areas with its industrial drones. Very practical applications. Likewise, constant temperature monitoring, remote monitoring. Patients don't need to come into hospitals, but the doctors can keep track of how how their vitals are behaving. Then solving last issues. We saw during when China first took off, right? One of our partners called JD.com, they utilize these autonomous robo vehicles which delivered food, medicines, all supplies in Wuhan. So this is another last mile issue that was addressed very well. Then virtual pods. Cognizant has created a solution called Soft Vision, which creates virtual pods for me. Like I can sit in my house and create a virtual pod and work with all the supporting infrastructure that is required. So these are very interesting use cases and practical applications of technology. While we talked about the trends that are evolving, but this is what is being made available by ITes customers to their customers to be able to sustain and to be resilient with regard to their business delivery operations.
All right. So from this vast variety of use cases, Dhanya, that you have listed, let's distill it down to what, according to you, are the key elements of a comprehensive digital transformation which can help companies stay competitive and agile in a fast changing digital world which now faces massive disruptions. What would those be?
Sure. I think, and when the minute you say digital transformation, my mind goes to what Satya Nadella said sometime in April 2020. He said, we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation literally happen in 2 months, right? From remote work and learning, sales and customer service, critical cloud infrastructure services, deploying security, things that we as salespeople used to, on a regular basis, present to customers, try to showcase value. Customers were in turn coming back to us and saying, hey, what you showed me or talked to me like a year back, can we quickly get that up and running? Because I do not want to miss out on the opportunity that this entire pandemic affected world is going to sort of measure me on. So 4 core tenets, I would say, where in the context of digital transformation, customers have started focusing. And I mentioned this in an earlier discussion too. The individual is at the core. So ensuring that even though the employees are all disconnected and working out of homes, ensuring that they are empowered with all the right tools, technology, knowledge, with collaboration, connected collaboration, to feel that they are working together as well-knit teams. So that empowering employees is obviously the most important one. The second one is who do we all exist as employees for? Obviously for our customers. So keeping a close watch on the changing trends at the customer place and engaging the customer with connected experiences. I talked about digital forensics. It's a continuous feedback loop. You hear from the customer what's going well, what's not going well, and you continue to engage them so that you take that digital feedback, and that automatically leads you to the third part or third leg of digital transformation, which is transforming the products with continuous innovation, being aware of what is required and continuously transform your products or your service for that matter to be able to deliver to customer requirements. And engulfing all of this amidst engaging customer, empowering the employee, as well as transforming your product, you will never be able to stay ahead of competition until you've optimized and automated your operations with all the insights that you're regularly getting. So that's what I would think that digital transformation, while it's a very cliched word, but each organization in its own horizons, 1, 2, 3, will have to break up these 4 tenets into what matters for them and frame their strategy accordingly to go ahead of the curve.
All right. But considering the 4 pillars of digital transformation, let me just pick one, which is empowering employees. And I'll come to you, Dr. Bhatt. Considering the challenge, the shortage of skilled professionals, with demand for digital skills in India being 8 times of what is available, and it's projected to rise 20 times by 2024, The question is, how do we bridge this gap? So let me ask you this question: how is NIIT helping the industry bridge this gap?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. Um, so it's quite obvious that no single thing can really bridge that gap. We have to work on multiple fronts, and that's the way to go. So number one is that NIIT itself has a very strong digital strategy. NIIT itself has digitally transformed and is further transforming. And again, just like any other industry, any other company, this digital transformation really became accelerated as the pandemic came in last year. Uh, if we were to see the way we were doing much of our learning interventions, they were essentially centered around our learning centers. That's how NIIT had built the business over decades. But if you see today, it's all about NIIT digital platform, and that's an integrated platform which we had invested in, we were creating, and we of course accelerated the implementation in the last year. Be it for a learner to find us, be it for learner to enroll with us, be it for the delivery of the program, be it for assessments, be it for digital certificates, you name it, anything to do with a learning program is now done through a scalable NIIT digital platform, which has, of course, used many of the technologies which Dhanniya has been speaking about, which are integrated into that. Now, the second part is as to what are the models by which we engage and models by which we really create this workforce. And there are essentially three. First is corporate. So we work with large corporates. We are working, as we speak, we were working with more than, maybe around 100 corporates in India we are working with. Of course, we are working globally as well, but, keeping India as the center, that's the kind of number. We are working with IT companies. We are working with global capability centers. We are working with R&D organizations. We are working with manufacturing organizations, core industries, banks, you name it. So, and we have programs for their employees at various levels. I'll talk about a few of them as we go along. So that's one model. The second is, of course, a direct to students. That's what our traditional learning center-led model was, which is now done through an NIIT digital platform. We have programs for developers, for data engineers, data science. We also have programs which are not in technology domain there, so over an NIIT digital platform. And third is what we call as talent pipeline as a service, where we tie up with an organization and create an talented talent pipeline for them by judging where they stand today, providing right kind of learning interventions with a key goal so that they can get into the right kind of jobs at the entry level. We do a similar TPAS program now at a lateral level also. So there are many people in the industry who are today in a job, they are earning, they are doing well, but they are not in an aspirational situation. So how do we get them into an aspirational job? How do we get somebody who is let's say a developer working for a long time in a maintenance kind of environment? How do we get that person to become a full stack developer who can really contribute to a modern development project, right? So those are the kind of programs we do under talent pipeline as a service. So at a high
All
level,
right, let's expand on that since we are close to the end of our conversation. Dr. Bhatt, could you tell us your vision of the future of the workplace and the role that you see StackRoute playing in helping organizations transform their workforce to deliver digital transformation projects with ease and efficiency?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, I'll just say there are three ways to look at it from three different perspectives. One is, of course, that digital narrative which we talked about. So you need to deal with digital migrants differently, digital natives differently. The second is how the digital technologies are shaping the kind of professional, and we see a clear trend that world is moving to largely what we call as pie-shaped people. So basically multi-talented people as against only specialists and generalists who have ruled the world for a long time, and of course that remains that there will be lots of specialists and generalists, but the need for a large number of what we call as versatilists are there. And how do we define them? In pi model, T model, etc. there, where you have a great appreciation, for example, of the entire set of digital technologies, and you have 2 or 3 deep expertise. So that's how we look at versatilists or the pie-shaped people. So that's another trend which we see in the workforce. Another is, of course, in terms of the kind of roles. Let me take a role set for the digital perspective. I mean, the number one, those who can define digital, right? So architects, engineering managers, product managers who can really define and design for the digital age. Then there are doers who can implement that, which are basically full stack developers. And world needs lots of full stack developers. StackRoute has been focused in this for over 5 years. Then, of course, there are people who can really deploy that in the modern digital ecosystem, in the modern clouds, in hybrid clouds. I mean, today, world is going beyond single cloud to hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, and so on and so forth. How do you deploy in that kind of complex? That too quickly. You have to do deployment much, much faster than what used to happen earlier. So there are DevOps engineers, there are site reliability engineers. There is a concept of machine learning ops which is coming in. How do you make AI more, given assurance that AI will deliver for you consistently? It's moving beyond experimentation on to actually scaling it up, right? So these are the kind of things. Then, of course, there are big data engineers. There are AI machine learning engineers, data scientists, cybersecurity specialists. These are the kind of roles which we see in the industry so far as the digital side is concerned. I'm not talking about the core industries as of now. Now for them, we have different type of offerings. So for those at the entry level, we have boot camps, which will essentially launch them to a career, be it a full stack developer, be it a data engineer, so to launch them into a new career. The second is that we have, we call them deep skilling programs, which will essentially take a traditional, technology person or a traditional role person onto the digital age. So, for example, making a full stack developer from a software engineer who works in a traditional technology, or making a site reliability engineer from somebody who is today maybe a network engineer in a traditional sense, right? Then we have also programs for the large workforce outside of IT who need to be digitally enabled. We call it digital versatilities program. So these are the kind of initiatives which we have from a StackRoute side, essentially to address this gaps.
Many options, many roles coming up. It's all about flexibility and learning. Dhanniya, summing up the discussion, how do you see technology helping strike the right balance between artificial and emotional intelligence? Where do companies go from here in using technology to stay competitive and serve customers in a more engaging manner?
Yeah, I think this is a very debated topic, the importance of emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. But yes, I think the point is about the coexistence. And as more and more AI plays a very vital role in our businesses and our processes, it's important to recognize the interception or the intersection of emotional intelligence into all our business dealings, right? And that's where I think the corporate leadership skills comes in, with the corresponding amounts of emotional intelligence to ensure that artificial intelligence grows in the right way. So in this space, Microsoft does a lot of work actually. We leverage Azure Cognitive Services, and we've done considerable work with one of our partners in UK. This is in the space of autism. We have something called the Smile app, where people with autism, they find it sometimes difficult to associate a particular facial expression with an emotion. So, they run them through mock interviews of sorts to be able to attach a particular emotion to a particular expression so that they feel comfortable. And this comes in very useful in the context of interviewing skills for these autistic people in organizations which are trying to employ them. Likewise, there is an app called an Across app, which is, while going across a road, crossing a traffic signal. There are so many signals coming in, and it's extremely stressful for people with autism because they are not able to filter and arrive at the right decision. So that is where our cognitive services sort of kicks in to be able to provide a solution to help them filter and get to the right decision on whether they need to cross or not to cross the road. In a little closer to home example, we have seen how the pandemic affected world about people working remotely, and initially they were worried about whether they will be productive. Then now we are worried about whether they are engaged or they are feeling disengaged. We hear lots of stories on attrition, etc. So we brought all these elements into a Viva platform, where which is actually a mix of a lot of Microsoft modern workplace collaboration and communication technologies. But what it focuses on is the productivity and the well-being of the employee at three levels: the individual, the team, as well as the organization. So it helps to prioritize, if somebody wants to take some me time, somebody wants to focus on what is the learning or upskilling I will do today, somebody wants to focus on connections, who are the people who you want to collaborate with today, etc. So to summarize, I think AI and emotional intelligence can play a gamut of a role in what we think are the key industry drivers in the space of intellectual capital and digital skills development, in the space of human capital, in the space of delivery excellence through automation and data-fueled business models that I talked about, in the space of anything as a service, which is the digital process outsourcing, as well as in customer experience. So that's the way I see the evolution of AI and emotional intelligence for ITes as a business driver.
Right. And it's always great to see that the human element is at the core. And as you mentioned, issues around accessibility and retention are all being addressed. So it's great to see that movement is being made. But I guess if you only do what you can do, you might never be more than what you are now. That's the theme when it comes to transformation. Of course, with the right training using digital tools, companies might just be making their best investments yet to be more resilient in the future. That's a wrap for our conversation today on the topic of trending now ITES. Technology makes the future resilient, as part of the Mint Executive Forum presented by Microsoft. I'd like to thank Dhanniya and Dr. Bhatt for sharing with us their insights and experiences. And of course, thank you to our viewers for tuning in. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.